This is Hashtag History, episode 120. I'm Rachel.
And I'm Leah. And we cannot even begin to express how excited we are about the special guests that we have on our season finale.
We truly cannot express our excitement. You all, our listeners, have heard us rave time and time again about Beyond Reproach, the podcast. And we are so thrilled to have the honor of having the host of Beyond Reproach, Stephanie and Tux, on the podcast today. Welcome, Stephanie and Tux.
Hi there. Happy to be here. We're excited.
This is a super long time coming. You both were really our very first podcast friends that we met through Instagram when we first started Hashtag History back in 2019. Wow. And you've always been just so supportive and so encouraging of our show. So we can't tell you how much it means to have you as friends, our podcast friends, and now finally have you on the show. So thank you so much.
Of course. Thank you for having us. We're so excited too. And yeah, it feels like, we've been distant friends for a very long time.
It really does feel that way.
Yeah.
It's funny because when you say 2019, when I remember back when we were very first talking, and I just feel like that was a million years ago, right?
It's so long.
That was at least 4 stages ago in my life.
Yeah,
right?
Totally.
Definitely.
Yeah. I'm a different person now from 2019. Everything has changed.
Yeah.
Beyond just our friendship, I really have to push again just how great your show is. We rave about you all the time on our podcast. But for those listeners that have somehow missed how many times we've raved about Beyond Reproach, you have to listen to the podcast. If you like ours, even remotely, if you tangentially like our show, you will fall in love with their show. I could really rave about your podcast forever, but instead of doing that, I'll just pass it off to you two to kind of explain more about the show, what it's all about, how long you've been doing it, and all that good stuff.
Great. Yeah, we started podcasting, I think, in 2018. In the fall of 20...
Yeah.
Wow. So 12 stages ago.
Yes, exactly.
Oh,
yeah.
my God.
Our show is about scandals and scandalousness in American politics and government. So we like to find these weird stories. It's not always a political scandal in the way that you think of a political scandal. Sometimes it's just scandalousness.
Elvis showing up at the White House.
Yeah,
oh my God.
Yes. Yeah,
One of my favorites.
On all the meds.
Yes.
On all the drugs.
With a bunch of guns.
With a bunch of guns.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Wow.
But sometimes it's just sort of government fuckery. Just things that the government is doing that by today's standards are scandalous and horrible. Mm-hmm. And so we just like to highlight those kinds of stories and talk about, how it all played out and then what it means for today.
Yeah. And how politicians should be beyond reproach, but very few, if not most, the majority of them aren't. So we will never run out of stories to tell on our podcast for that reason.
Yeah, unfortunately, that is true.
Yes.
Something else that you do on your podcast that I know makes us feel what's the word I want? Inferior all the time is your cocktail segment.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
That is all Tux. And I'm in that same boat feeling inferior. Yeah. When I have to make my own cocktails, they look real sad.
Tell us more about your cocktail segments. I love them so much.
Thank you so much. It really means a lot to me because I do put a lot of effort into the history behind the cocktails that we do and making them look pretty and choosing the appropriate glassware.
Glasses, yeah.
I'm also kind of a cocktail nerd, and I love antique glassware. I have a huge, I don't know if you can see behind me.
Yes.
There's some glassware displayed in the cabinet behind me, but I have a lot more than that.
Yeah, no, I'm so impressed with how much history you have on a lot of the cocktails you do. And to the point where I'm pretty sure both Rachel and I have reached out to you and been where are you finding all the information?
Tell us your secrets.
Because I mean, granted, we're very different in that the cocktails we do, we try to like in a punny way tie them into our,
totally.
or the title of them is connected in some way.
Yeah.
And that is really hard because then there are these random cocktails that you just find online. So there isn't really a history. It's just something someone made up and posted on Pinterest. But so it's so cool to see yours where a lot of them have all these historical facts about them. It's so cool.
Yeah. For those, for people who don't listen to our show yet, we do instead of making the cocktail like themed to go along with the episode, we choose a cocktail that was popular in the era of the story that we are telling, so that it's sort of like immersive to that time period. But that's why it makes it easier to find the history of those cocktails, because they have been around for a long time and they were really well-known popular cocktails. It's not very often that I'm doing something that is sort of just something I found on the internet. So in some ways, sometimes I feel like it's not themed well enough to the actual story, but sometimes it's like...
It's more about the time period.
Exactly. Yeah. So it has, there are positives and negatives to the way we do it versus the way other people do it too, and the way you do it.
I would say all positives, because again, if you aren't listening to Beyond Reproach yet, all you have to do is just go to their Instagram or their website and just look at how gorgeous the pictures of the cocktails are.
Thank you.
That is probably the most intimidating part. Isn't necessarily like when I hear how great your cocktails are, I'm like, oh my God, I bet they taste 100 times better. But at least I'll never know that part. Yeah. It's the seeing the pictures of yours versus ours. Yours are gorgeous.
I am also, in my, when I'm not podcasting, I am a photographer too. So that helps.
Yeah.
On that note, I guess Stephanie and Tux have prepared a really interesting topic for us this week, one that I know our listeners will love. So we're just going to hand it off to you two to tell us everything.
I'm Rachel.
And I'm Leah.
And this is #History,
the podcast for both history nerds and history haters alike,
where we dive into history's greatest stories of controversy, conspiracy, and corruption.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you again so much for having us. We're so excited about this. You said that you're big fans of our show. We have been big fans of your show since you started. It was really fun to have podcast friends early. Yeah, so early. And, we started a little bit before you, but not much. So it was really cool to have someone sort of along on the journey with us.
Ditto.
When we knew we were going to be guests on your show, we had a really hard time choosing a story to tell, because we were like, we have to get this right. We have to.
Yeah.
We wanted to find a way to, make sure that we told a story that sort of exemplifies the kinds of stories that we like to tell on our show, the kinds of topics we like to talk about. Our favorite kinds of stories to cover on our show are stories from American history that are sort of foundational to the way American society works today. We love to find these weird moments in history that really explain so much about the present day when you sort of explore the downstream consequences of these stories. Not every story we tell on the show is like that, but we try to do at least a couple each season of these foundational stories. Yeah. So the one we chose today is definitely one of both of our favorites that we've ever done. Today we're going to be talking about the United Daughters of the Confederacy.
You sure are.
Can't wait. And yeah, I would agree that one of my most favorite things about studying history is seeing that through line.
Absolutely.
And seeing where it started and the modern day relevance. Totally. A lot of the time that comes from sometimes hundreds of years ago when this foundation was built.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it makes me feel less crazy to know okay, this had a start point and I can kind of see how we got here.
Right.
Okay, so jumping in. So after the Civil War, white Southern society was in shambles. Their cities were destroyed. Their sturdiest men were dead. So wealthy Southern white women, they started forming these ladies' memorial associations. That's what they called them. These organizations, they helped widows and children of Confederate dead, which made all the sense in the world.
Totally.
Their men were dead. They needed money for funerals, for, just general costs for these families. So they created new cemeteries. They would fundraise for commemorative ceremonies and monuments to the dead. And this is kind of when I start to raise my eyebrows. I'm like, monuments? Do you mean headstones because cool? Or do you mean statues because not cool?
Yeah.
Right.
So these groups, they got really, really popular fast. They were really good at fundraising. And after the need for funerals and care of widows and babies had waned, these women's groups just kept growing. Small groups would merge into other large larger independent groups, and they just kept expanding. About 30 years after the war was over, the United Daughters of the Confederacy was born in 1894 in Nashville, Tennessee. Their primary functions were constructing Confederate memorials, trash, and solidifying the place of women as the cultural and historical gatekeepers of the Old South. Which, okay, you might ask yourself, what does that mean exactly? Basically, they wanted to control the narrative. They wanted to weave a tale that made them feel really good about themselves.
The lost cause.
And about their racism, essentially.
Yeah, Rachel, you just mentioned the Lost Cause.
Yeah.
I don't know if your listeners have heard of the Lost Cause, but basically it was sort of this like entire cultural movement among white Southerners to rewrite their own story after the Civil War. Americans have always been really good at lying to ourselves about who we are and how we got what we have and why we live on this land.
It's how we feel good about ourselves.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah. And all Americans have to do that, and we always have. But before the Civil War, people in the South were sort of born into this system in which they were enslaving other people that, you know, human beings standing right next to them. They're like, I own you and you have to do everything I say or I'll beat the shit out of you. And so they just found ways to justify that in their head. They lied to themselves. This is just how it's supposed to be. The Bible says that it's cool to do this.
It's always been this way.
Exactly. Yeah. And so when the war was over and these human beings that they were enslaving left them, a lot of people in the South were completely shocked. They just did not see this coming.
Wait, our property is choosing to leave?
Yeah.
What?
Literally. Yeah.
And I'm glad you're going into the lost cause. My understanding of this component of the lost cause is it's kind of that white savior complex that, like, even though we were enslaving these people, they obviously have a better life with us than they ever could outside of living within my four walls.
Exactly. Yeah, we're gonna get into that, but it was all about like, oh, they're being civilized by us, and like they're totally benefiting from this, and they love it too. They're getting just as much out of it as we are.
When Tux told this story on our podcast, like, I remembered laughing so hard because I had no clue that they were actually shocked when everyone left. Like, they were shocked. Like, they had created such a fantasy in their mind that they...
You have to.
Yeah, it's true.
To justify it in your own mind. And I think the way that it was seen was, I'm not like, I'm not beating and raping the people I enslaved. So obviously I'm treating them well. But by essence of enslaving people, that is mistreatment.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. And maybe you're not the one to be doing it, but that doesn't mean it's not happening.
Yeah, it doesn't mean your neighbor's not.
Yeah.
Exactly. And that you don't know that it's happening. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah. Complicit.
Yeah. But these people really convinced themselves that these people that they enslaved liked things the way that they were. And so they were completely like flabbergasted. I actually read some letters I found in a book that I found on American history. There were letters from people writing like, I can't believe they left. Why would they do this?
Delusion.
Yeah.
Wow.
I never saw this coming. Yeah. But so the bottom line was after the Civil War, in the South, they lost the war and they lost big, and they knew that the whole thing had been fought over their need to enslave other people to maintain their way of life.
I thought it's about states' rights.
Yes, we will be talking about states' rights.
It's like you read our minds.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So it was a bad look, and they didn't want to reckon with the evils of their past. So basically, after Reconstruction was over, all the white people, just all of them got together and were like, hey, we're going to just live under a different delusion. We're going to lie to ourselves about something else. And that was that the war hadn't been about slavery at all.
Yeah.
It's about states' rights. And that's a major part of the lost cause.
Yeah.
So if any of you out there are saying to yourselves, hey, wait, no, the Civil War was about states' rights.
Yeah.
Congratulations, you have been officially indoctrinated by the mythology of the lost cause.
I mean, that's what I learned in school. And like, I'm from Ohio. Like, I didn't grow up in the South.
Wow.
Like, this ideology is everywhere.
And again, that's that through line in history, right? So these groups were established in, you said, the late 1800s or early 1900s, and still 100+ years later.
Exactly.
That's still the education that some people are receiving.
It's wild. Yeah.
Wow.
So I shouldn't have to say this, but I'm going to say this. The Confederacy was founded on the principles of white supremacy and the enslavement of an entire race of people. And the Civil War was unequivocally fought because of that. And there is so much proof of this. All you need to do is look at the declarations of secession that were submitted by Southern states before the war, or look at the way the practice of slavery was treated in the writing of the Confederate Constitution, or you could read the speech that Alexander Stephens, the vice president of the Confederacy, made, saying that the Confederacy's, quote, cornerstone rests upon the great truth that the Negro is not equal to the white man. That slavery, subordination to the superior race, is his natural and normal condition. This, our new government, is the first in the history of the world based upon this great physical, philosophical, and moral truth.
Oh, you can't refute that.
Telling on himself.
Yeah. There's no getting around that. Like, they said this.
Mm-hmm.
Like, these are the architects of the Confederacy.
He quite literally used those words.
Literally.
The foundation, the cornerstone.
The cornerstone of the Confederacy is slavery and their belief in white supremacy and white superiority.
Yeah.
But for some reason today, people still just can't get their heads around that and refuse to believe it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they were taught lies.
Exactly.
Yeah. They were taught a lot of lies. So the three main focuses of the Lost Cause were, the first big Pinocchio was that the war was just a struggle for Southern independence over Northern aggression. It was not about maintaining slavery.
Not at all. No.
No. Who told you that?
The war of Northern aggression.
Yeah. The second one was that enslaved people lived their lives for chattel slavery and they never wanted to be free.
Wow.
So you just have to ignore all the poisonings, all of the runaways, all of the rebellions. That was, who even knows what that was about? Because it was not about freedom.
It was just individual grumpy people.
Yeah. Rugged individuals. It was not representative of the collective at all. So they love to focus on stories of happily enslaved people who didn't mind their children and partners being snatched for them because their lives were so good. These white Southerners, they love the idea of like mammies and Uncle Toms who felt like they were like part of their family.
Who needs a real family when you can just stand next to and serve some white family instead?
There you go.
My thing is like, those are clearly the exception to the rule. I mean, in reality, right? So they're picking these stories out. And then also someone can be comfortable and happy while still being oppressed and enslaved. Yes. You know what I mean? Like, so just because somebody says like, yeah, I think of them as my family, it's like, that doesn't mean
that they think of you as their family.
Right. Or that like in any way that this is the right situation or the right moral, like.
Yeah. Or if they had any other option, that this is the one they would choose.
There you go. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, we don't choose our family.
Yeah. So the third and big, I mean, I guess these are all pretty big Pinocchios, but they like to say that the war had only been lost because the noble, honorable Southern armies were outnumbered. They insisted that Confederate soldiers were more courageous, they had more military skill than the Union, but they had just been overwhelmed.
That doesn't make much sense.
Right?
No, it literally. And it also doesn't like match up with the actual facts about like the numbers
also that.
Yeah.
You over here with your facts.
Yeah. I do think if you were to like take the additional step and look into the facts, you would see that wasn't true. But even just that blanket statement by itself, even if you don't look any further, we were so much better. Like we were so much stronger and more skilled, but also we lost.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Both of those things are true at the same time.
Yeah. They said that they had simply been overwhelmed by the Union's greater manpower and industrial force and just cold-hearted ruthlessness. In fact, this is where the Lost Cause, like those words came from. Their reason for fighting was entirely honorable, but they were destined to lose from the beginning. Which is like,
wow.
It's so funny because it's like they're trying to say that like we knew we were going to lose, but we fought in the war anyways. It's like,
because it was the right thing to do.
That is a lie. You thought you were going to win and you lost. Like that's what happened.
it's playing video games with your sibling and saying like, I wanted you to win. You know, I didn't,
Totally,
you know,
yeah.
I didn't, you know, I could have won if I wanted to.
I didn't want to.
And I actually tried.
Yeah.
Like,
You were just more ruthless.
Yeah, I'm better at you. I'm better at this than you are, but
You're just more honorable, so you're just going to lose. What?
See, again, like that doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
I'm more skilled than you.
Yeah.
I'm more equipped than you. You're just more aggressive than me.
Mm-hmm.
Still doesn't really make sense.
Again, you're trying to make sense out of nonsense.
Yeah. Yeah. That's one of our favorite quotes on the show. That is from Stephanie's mom.
Yeah.
You can't make sense out of nonsense.
You can't make sense out of nonsense.
Love it. That's good.
So yeah, this was the sort of prevailing cultural sentiment in the South when the United Daughters of the Confederacy was formed. The original Ladies Memorial Associations may have been sort of had benign intentions at first, just, putting together new cemeteries and caring for widows and babies. But by the time the UDC was in the business of erecting memorials, they had shifted their focus from erecting them in cemeteries to putting them on pedestals in town squares and in front of courthouses and schools. And the subjects of the monuments had also shifted from, instead of just honoring the memory of individual dead soldiers or groups of unnamed dead soldiers, instead they were now glorifying famous Confederate leaders and generals. And so after Reconstruction, Southerners were really scared about the idea that Black people might want to be in positions of power and have control over their own lives.
Why? Like, why would they be afraid?
Yeah, they were treated so well.
Yeah, exactly.
They were treated so well.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They were treated so well.
They wanted to be here.
Yeah, they loved everything. They loved the way it was. Why would they want to change anything?
It actually hurts to try to not apply sense to nonsense because
it is.
Because
it is
again,
difficult.
like that sentence alone doesn't make sense. Why would you be afraid of these people that love you and felt so comfortable around you and that you treated so well? Why would you be afraid of them having their own voice?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Literally. It don't make no sense.
My brain hurts.
So these monuments that they were erecting at this time, these were just another way to send a very strong message to anyone that saw these about who was still in charge in the South. Mm-hmm. These, white men were the ones in power, and you better watch your back. So when it comes to the time periods that most of these monuments went up, there were kind of two distinct different periods that saw significant spikes in the number of monuments that were being erected. The biggest push by far started around 1900, just about 20 or so years after the end of Reconstruction and when Southern states were starting to enact Jim Crow laws. Mm-hmm. That's when they started to really pump up the number of monuments. And this period lasted well through the 1920s when the Ku Klux Klan was at their peak of membership. In fact, by this point in the 20s, the UDC barely was even trying to conceal their white supremacist views at this point, and they even at one point erected a monument to the KKK in 1926.
Wow.
It's so bold. So they rarely, if ever, honored Black Americans in these monuments. But in the rare cases that did, trust that it was on some bullshit. The Black people in these monuments were always portrayed as happy, loyal servants. In 1914, the UDC was given a place for a Confederate monument in Arlington National Cemetery, which is so upsetting.
I just got goosebumps all over my whole body.
I know.
Yeah. This monument helped foster the idea that Black people were willing and eager to fight alongside their Confederate enslavers, kidnappers, torturers. They included imagery in this monument of both a weeping mammy figure holding a white baby and a Black man dutifully marching alongside his enslaver into battle, which is just like, could you imagine if there was like a monument for Nazis featuring like the Jewish people who helped during the Holocaust? Like that, it's just in DC of all places. Like,
is it there?
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's still there.
It's there right now?
Correct. Right now. Yeah.
You can't.
Your face, Rachel. I wish everyone could hear Rachel's face.
Oh my God. That actually is really shocking to me. Not that this was a thing. That doesn't surprise me at all. That this was at one time erected. That's actually kind of shocking.
Yeah, it's a huge monument. And I think these two images are just a very small part of a much larger, image that's going on.
Still not okay.
No, not
Still
at
not
all.
okay. People are, but I see what you're saying. If it were a huge monument, you know, it would have drawn more attention at this point. More people would be aware of it. I'm going to assume people like myself are not even aware that this exists.
Yeah, exactly. I didn't know until you did this story. Yeah. So in 1923, the UDC lobbied to erect another monument in Washington, D.C. in, quote, memory of the faithful slave mammies of the South.
Ew.
The Senate voted to... Yes.
It's so ridiculous.
Wait, and what was the year on that? Did you say?
1923.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, this is like KKK's heyday.
Absolutely,
so this is totally fits with the era. But yeah, to the memory of the faithful slave mammies of the South. The Senate voted to allow it because, you know, white supremacy in America. Yeah. But thankfully, it never happened. This one didn't happen because it was just going to be the mammies.
Okay. Not a small component of another
little
monument.
Victory. You guys, a tiny victory.
Okay. So that one, we don't have to worry about the other one.
Yes, it's still there.
Yes.
Okay.
Still there. So the second big wave of new memorials started in the 1950s and 60s in direct reaction to the growing civil rights movement. Shocking, right?
Yeah.
There was a lot of international pressure because racism was seen globally as something that civilized countries didn't do. And public opinion was starting to change, starting to shift. So people in the South, they wanted to make sure that future generations of Southern whites would keep believing this revisionist stories that they love to tell about themselves. They wanted to keep the South's true reasons for fighting the war, eye roll around true, but they wanted to keep their myth going, basically.
Yeah.
Preserve their interpretation.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's really ironic that people today call efforts to remove these Confederate monuments an attempt to erase history, when the reality is that the very reasons that these monuments exist in the first place is exactly that, to erase history, or at least to revise it and make it. Yeah. So if anything, taking them down is actually an attempt to correct a distorted revisionist version of history.
Wow.
So, but, people, that's why this monument still exists in Arlington Cemetery. Is that there's all this uproar about trying to erase history by taking down Confederate monuments.
But that was fabricated history in the first place.
Exactly. Yeah. So today, a shameful number of Americans do not believe that slavery was the primary cause of the Civil War.
Oh, God, don't tell us stats.
Yes.
Yeah.
In a poll published, cover your ears.
I'm going to take off the headphones for this part.
Yeah, covering your ears is just going to press the headphones closer.
It makes you louder.
So a poll published in 2015 showed that 41% of Americans believe that the war was about states' rights. 41%. And that same poll showed that 37% of people believe that children should not be taught that slavery was a reason for the war.
I can actually hear my own heart.
I saw Leah's face it's like your brain broke.
Yeah, you saw the moment it broke in half.
Can we do a post 2016 or post 2020
I know
poll on that?
Yeah.
Or do we want to
I'm afraid it might be worse than it was then.
Yeah, do we want to know?
I don't think it could be. I mean, it could be worse.
There's a lot of mythology flying around these days. People will believe anything these days. This all kind of brings me to the other major function of the UDC, the United Daughters of the Confederacy. They were not just building these Confederate monuments. The main work that the UDC was actually doing was pumping out this lost cause propaganda and carefully controlling the way American history was taught in schools. Yes.
Oh, no.
Historian Karen Cox wrote in her 2003 book, Dixie's Daughters, that the UDC's biggest goal was to indoctrinate white Southern children in the lost cause, thus creating, quote unquote, living monuments. Living monuments.
Yikes.
She said, quote, they had...
You're like, wait, it gets worse.
But wait, there's more. She said they had, quote, they had a multi-pronged approach to doing that. It involved going into schools and putting up battle flags and portraits of generals. It meant getting schools named for famous Confederates. It was creating the children of the Confederacy, which was their formal youth auxiliary, so that the UDC could draw members from the group when they became adults. Children were always involved in the unveiling of monuments. They would select one child to pull the cord, and then there'd be cheers when the monument was unveiled. Children in the stands would form what they called a living battle flag, and then they sang Southern patriotic songs.
I feel like I have to say it is that they're just like the worst sore losers.
Thank you.
Possible.
Yes.
Like that's what this whole thing is, right? Because this is the one thing that I hear people say over and over is like, why are we trying so desperately to preserve? Which again, Tux, you've already kind of debunked that. We're not preserving the original history anyway.
No.
We're preserving a revisionist history. But why are we trying to preserve a revisionist history for a period of time that lasted for 4 years? Like just,
exactly.
Like it just blows my mind that this is one of the shortest periods in American history.
Why is this the hill we're dying on?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah.
Like, why are there... I mean, I know the answer. I know the answer to the why. But, like, just the fact that we're still waving the Betsy Ross flag, just the fact that there's still Confederate flags, the fact that it's just like, this was... Do you understand? This was a blip. It should have been a blip in a history textbook, the Confederacy.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah, there's just all of this mythology built up around it so that, like, people just can't let it go.
Yeah. So the UDC, they also published children's books, Shiver, and memoirs to influence Southern children. I don't really know how many children are reading memoirs, but the kids' books. So together with the cooperation of school boards, they sponsored essays focused on the lost cause mythology, veiled as history.
I gotta go, guys. This is you.
Yeah, right.
You did it for me.
I'm gonna go. I gotta be.
Yeah.
Thanks for having us on the show.
I need to refill this drink and never come back. Oh, you guys are like just getting worse and worse. Okay,
I know.
Please continue.
That's how we
Your
do
show
on our
in a
show.
nutshell.
Yeah, exactly.
Rachel goes out for a pack of smokes.
Yeah, never comes, never returns.
So the UDC, they sponsored essays on history and the origins of the KKK, and it received thousands of entries every year. In 1914, they even published a children's book about the KKK called The Ku Klux Klan or Invisible Empire. And it celebrated the Klan's fight against Reconstruction. This is a quote from this kid's book.
Children's book about the KKK.
Yeah. During the Reconstruction period, sturdy white men of the South.
Sturdy.
Sturdy.
That's like one of our favorite things to make jokes about on our show. Because we covered this story so long ago that we talk about sturdy white men like, all the time.
These sturdy white men of the South, against all odds, maintained white supremacy and secured Caucasian civilization when its very foundations were threatened. Like, what?
Let me just say, if your foundation is threatened, it's not that sturdy.
Exactly, yeah.
Look at you with facts.
But also, I'm going to assume that these books are being pushed out to students of color as well. These aren't just white students reading these books, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, all the kids in the South had to read these books, which is like so damaging.
So damaging.
Yeah. But that was the point. To keep Black people in their place. We
get into, I think actually you're just about to, but like, it's not just about elevating the KKK. These books actually like completely denigrate Black people constantly. Yeah. All of them.
Yeah. So this book, it goes on to accuse Black people of laziness. Again, this is a kid's book.
And a little Black kid is reading this.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It accuses Black people of laziness and wanting handouts because they refuse to keep working for free for their white enslavers. This is a quote. Many Negroes conceived the idea that freedom meant cessation from labor, so they left the fields, crowding into the cities and towns, expecting to be fed by the United States government. In a kid's book, in one section, the book even highlights the methods the KKK used to terrorize Black people, praising these KKK members for taking the law into their own hands. Rough justice is like what they used to call it. But it gets even worse.
Oh, no. Okay, go ahead.
Oh, no, go on.
I was just going to say, I feel that the people that are pushing this narrative are oftentimes also the people that say, like, this might be a little bit of a stretch, but to say, like, don't listen to metal music because it gives you ideas. Don't listen or don't watch violent TV because it gives kids ideas, but give them a book that literally tells them how to terrorize people that don't look like them.
Totally.
Is not giving kids bad ideas.
Yeah.
Most kids don't really listen to what their parents say, but they do what their parents do, unfortunately. Exactly. So their most effective tool for indoctrinating Southern children was controlling their textbooks.
School textbooks.
Yeah.
I was afraid this was where this was going.
Yes. Yeah.
This is where I really got to go.
Yeah. Oh, we thought we'd broken you before. Just you wait.
No.
This is where I really got to go.
Yeah. So in 1919, several prominent Confederate heritage associations came together to form a committee to promote their lost cause version of history through school textbooks. And they became known as the Rutherford Committee after the UDC's most prominent member, Mildred Lewis Rutherford.
Boo.
That's a name, too. I feel like,
right? Yes. Isn't it?
I feel like you gotta go one of two ways. Awesome or really horrible with a name.
Oh, yeah. She picked her path for sure.
Right.
Old Mildred. Yeah.
Old Mildred.
So the Rutherford Committee published a 23-page pamphlet called A Measuring Rod to Test Textbooks and Reference Books in Schools, Colleges, and Libraries. And this pamphlet was written by old Mildred herself. And it became the committee's gold standard for what was acceptable in a history textbook.
What were Mildred's credentials?
Just gonna say, well, not just what are her credentials, but like what was she measuring? I mean, I know what she was measuring, but
basically they just didn't want anyone to question their already like decided upon lies. They wanted to make sure that school textbooks continued to educate children to believe the lies that they were trying to tell them. So before long, Mildred also published a blacklist of textbooks that she found offensive to the Lost Cause mythology. So almost immediately, UDC chapters across the South started to aggressively lobby their local schools and state governments and promoting books that they liked and banning books that they didn't.
Brew line.
Which, banning books is always a sign of a really chill democracy.
Yes.
Totally.
So you're always on the right side if your team is banning books.
So in several states, the UDC was also directly involved with reviewing history textbooks that were going to be chosen for schools.
Again, what are their credentials here? Are we all educators? Are we all historians?
No.
Oh, bless your heart for thinking that. No.
You don't. You just have to be well known.
Well known, and your grandpa was a Confederate soldier.
Totally. So they were sending in reviews and approvals and rejections to these state textbook commissions, and in many cases, members of the UDC even got themselves appointed to these same textbook commissions to make sure that they had as much influence over which textbooks would be chosen as possible. And so for national book publishers, this meant that they had to decide if and how to sell textbooks to Southern schools. If they went all in with Lost Cause dogma, they would only be able to sell these books in the South, so most of them decided to print two different versions of the same textbook.
What?
Crazy.
One with
a history.
History
not,
book.
Wait,
yeah,
sorry,
there's two.
Repeat. Not a fiction, edition
No,
1 and 2.
In the same country, there are two different versions of history textbooks for children.
That's so wild that they did that.
Yes. So one version would have this very carefully worded watered down version that was appropriate for the South, and another book would have sort of actual historical facts for everybody else who wanted to know the real story, or at least a version of the real story. And but even the like books that went to northern schools or western schools, a lot of times, Ohio, a lot of times they would still be influenced by this lost cause mythology, because they wanted to make sure that they didn't have to edit like whole sections. So they would just like, basically a lot of times it was just like a section on the Civil War or a section on the South would have to be edited out or changed. But everything else, they just made sure to water everything down just to make sure it was okay.
I think it's totally fair for us California students to have learned things about the great state of California that someone from Ohio or New York didn't learn in your textbooks, right? Like you don't need to know about, I don't know, the San Francisco Bridge, but to be teaching about something that happened nationwide to all of us, to be teaching it differently, the same event differently.
Yeah.
It's wild. Yeah. And because certain sections of these books were often pretty lean in the South, they just like edited out whole sections.
That's a little thinner than the other.
Yeah, it's like a page. A page. And I think Stephanie said when we first recorded that the page was mostly pictures.
Pictures with little captions, and that's it.
Yeah.
Wow.
But so Southern schools instead would supplement units on the Civil War using state history books that were often written by local authors and local publishers and had a stronger lost cause bias.
Sure.
So in 1923, the UDC's North Carolina division endorsed a book called Young People's History of North Carolina, which was used as a textbook in Southern schools well into the 1940s. It blamed the struggle over slavery on, get this, overzealous and aggressive Northern abolitionists.
That's what the war was all about.
It was just those abolitionists that were trying to free people that didn't want to be freed.
Mm-hmm. Rabble-rousers.
Wow.
Rabble-rousers.
I mean, is that what they're implying? Is that enslaved people didn't want to be free? That they were like
didn't
forced
want to be free.
out of slavery?
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
okay.
Correct. So it described the KKK in almost mystical terms, and it, of course, intermingled discussions of white indentured servitude with black enslavement to equate the two, to equate slavery as like it was like these people were working off a debt, which, as we all know, is not true. But this was a really popular and really successful tactic in UDC textbooks. So this is also from this North Carolina book. This is a quote. As a rule, the slaves were comfortably clothed, given an abundance of wholesome food, and treated kindly.
Oh, yeah.
Occasionally, some hard-hearted master or a bad-tempered mistress made the lot of slaves a hard one. But such cases were not common. Cruel masters and cruel mistresses were scorned then, just as men and women who treat animals cruelly are now scorned. What?
You're literally equating black people in America to dogs and cows.
Yep. Yes.
This concept of like, I didn't beat you, or I gave you clothes and I gave you food and I didn't rape you. So by essence, you were treated well. But again, the simple concept of being enslaved against your will is mistreatment.
Yes, correct.
Well, and that that's all true, but like that's also overlooking the fact that there was like a systemic practice of beating, like
yes.
I don't want to I don't want to downplay, a lot of them beat their slaves, and
Absolutely.
It was normal.
Not
and
even
it was
beat, killed. There was no punishment.
Be killed, raped,
like you could do anything, and
Literally.
many people did.
It's like unfathomable how horrific the system is, even for the ones who were quote unquote treated well. It's like ridiculous to try and push this narrative to children.
Yeah. So this book went on to say that these slaves were brought into the colonies fresh from a savage life in Africa, and in 2 or 3 generations were changed into respectable men and women. This fact shows better than any words can how prudently and how wisely they were managed.
I don't like your quote.
So ridiculous.
I don't like these quotes.
No.
These quotes are the worst. So obviously the UDC, they banned any book written in what they called the Northern view of history, but they would even reject any book that was written by someone who had just even lived in the North or had been educated in the North. They were not having any sort of reality outside of their Southern lost cause mythology. So they even tried to ban Northerners from teaching in Southern schools and from serving on their school boards. That's how afraid they were of the truth.
Yeah.
Jeez.
We can't let anyone that believes anything and like doesn't believe the lies we've been teaching our children.
Just like have heard of like things that aren't lies.
Yeah. I think the word that you used is important. They were afraid.
Yeah,
afraid.
Absolutely.
Afraid.
Yeah. So by the 1930s, thankfully, the power of the UDC had started to wane. The Civil War veterans were starting to die off, and the country had just been through the First World War. We were entering the Depression. And, you know, the younger generation didn't really have as much interest or didn't care as much about fighting for these legends of the lost cause. But the propaganda that the UDC had been pushing for decades at this point had already worked to indoctrinate multiple generations of Southern men and women. And so, you know, maybe the younger generation didn't care, but their parents still believed all this stuff. And politicians who had been educated with these same textbooks just picked up where the UDC left off. So even though their power was starting to wane, these lost cause textbooks were kept in most schools. And then in the 1950s, as the civil rights movement started to gain steam, these like lost cause stands dug in their heels and started a whole second wave of new Confederate monuments, as we mentioned before, but also new revisionist school textbooks. In like the 50s and 60s, new ones coming out. In 1957, Virginia commissioned a bunch of new books, including one called Virginia, History, Government, Geography, which presented slavery in very positive terms. It said, quote, a feeling of strong affection existed between masters and slaves in a majority of Virginia homes.
Oh my God.
And, quote, enslaved people were happy to be in Virginia and were better off than they would have been in Africa.
Why they all leave though?
I know.
Huh?
Yeah.
And it also said, quote, abolitionists lied about slavery in the South. Those damn abolitionists just trying to ruin everything for everyone. Mm-hmm. So the publisher of this book even included illustrations showing happy enslaved Africans in Western dress clothes stepping off of the slave ship and shaking hands with their enslavers.
It's so wild, these illustrations. Like the little girl's wearing like a bonnet and like it's it's fantasy.
Literally like dress clothes, Sunday best.
Sans chains.
Yeah, exactly. Oh no chain. Why would they wouldn't have to chain people who are happy to come here to work for someone in Virginia.
That actually does make my stomach sick because I think why this whole topic is so disturbing is because where do you end up drawing the line of someone's, what's the word I want? Like, you only know what you know. If you're taught, if your textbook teaches slavery as people coming from Africa in suits and being grateful to be here and
business
shaking
casual.
hands.
Totally.
Business casual. I mean, I think everyone has a responsibility, right, to be good people, but it's just like, where do you draw that line if this is what you're taught all growing up? If these are the illustrations that are in your book? Well,
that's kind of the whole point of all of this is their desire to want to believe that they're good people and also believe that they were on the right side of history. So they had to like make up these lies and teach their children these lies and maintain these lies so that they could have it both ways.
Yeah,
definitely. And I get that as the adult that is aware that they are revising history, but as a kid,
these kids don't know
growing up.
Yeah,
it's wild. If they had just reckoned with their history in the beginning during Reconstruction,
well, don't be ridiculous.
Don't be ridiculous.
I'm being ridiculous. You're right. That is
a little bit of revisionist history right there.
If they had spaceships.
Right.
There we go.
Wow, that's really awful.
Yeah.
I had never heard of that illustration before.
Yeah. Another high school history book from Virginia at the time was called Cavalier Commonwealth. And it said that enslaved people, quote, did not work so hard as the average free laborer, since he did not have to worry about losing his job. In fact, the slave enjoyed what we might call comprehensive social security. Generally speaking, his food was plentiful, his clothing adequate, his cabin warm, his health protected, and his leisure carefree.
But what leisure are we talking about?
Seriously.
I would like an example of said leisure.
I know.
And again, but why'd they all leave though? They had such a leisurely, they had a life of leisure.
Yes.
And I don't.
Yeah, why would you leave? But also, like, is it a job if you're not getting paid?
But they have Social Security. Don't worry about it. Comprehensive Social Security. That's socialism.
Oh my God. So these books were not phased out of use in Virginia until the 1970s, which is really despicable.
1970s.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Mississippi's public schools used lost cause textbooks exclusively until the 1980s and only stopped because of a lawsuit from the NAACP and a federal court order. Like, they probably would still have it today if it weren't for these things. In Texas in 2010, the Board of Education removed slavery as the central cause of the Civil War and replaced it with states' rights and secession. In 2010. 4 years ago. The standards were revised and they now blame slavery, secession, and states' rights equally.
Oh.
They added slavery as that. Maybe that was a little bit of a part of it too.
One third of the factors.
Yeah.
Yes. So in 2018, as a homework assignment, a class of 8th graders at a school in San Antonio received a worksheet titled The Life of Slaves, A Balanced View. And they were instructed to list the negative and positive aspects of slavery.
Yes.
How did they react to this?
Parents complained to the school, rightfully so. The media caught wind. It became a really big scandal, and there was an investigation. The teacher who assigned this lesson, this worksheet, was suspended, not fired, mind you, suspended, and an audit was made of the textbook where the lesson came from.
As much as, the teacher is a piece of garbage for assigning this, but also this was not his decision to assign this textbook. Like this workbook was chosen by the school board and handed to this teacher. And he was sort of, not to say like, oh, he's just doing his job, because it's still like, he's still a piece of garbage for assigning this, when he could have been like, this is bullshit, I'm not going to assign this page.
Yeah.
But I'm sure that he was not the only teacher out there who did this. He's the only teacher that like the students were like, this is garbage, and showed their parents.
The parents, the black parents, were like, what the is this?
Yeah. So it again goes to the systemic issue.
Yeah.
It's the school as a whole.
Totally.
The school board as a whole. The state as a whole.
Exactly.
Yeah, definitely the state is responsible for this. So the publisher's answer, because this created a huge firestorm, his answer was that the text had not been published since 2007, which is way too late. Like, that is not a good defense.
That is not an excuse.
Not
right?
At all. Like, so it
if
was
he
cool
had been like,
before 2007.
He was like, sorry guys, the last edition of this was 1867. Sorry guys. Like,
that would be okay. Yeah.
Still wouldn't be okay, but like, all right, context.
Yeah.
2007. So the book, he basically said the book is out of print and we don't sell it anymore. Like, leave us alone. But yeah.
What more do you want from us?
We haven't taught about the benefits of slavery for at least 10 years.
The positive aspects of slavery.
Oh my God. That's atrocious.
It's been a whole decade. What more do you want from us?
That's atrocious.
Yeah. So thankfully, this lost cause mythology is sort of becoming more and more rare in schools. It's definitely still being taught. But it is becoming more and more rare because there's a lot more eyes on school textbooks. There's a lot more people being like, you can't say that.
And also Gen Z is the most diverse cohort we've ever had. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of
snaps for Gen Z because I have a little bit of hope for our world because of that.
Me too, Leah. The babies are our future. They're going to save us.
Yeah. Yep. But if Stephanie, you were saying you were taught states' rights.
I was taught states' rights. Yeah. And it was really just growing up in Ohio, well, I think any child growing up anywhere, you think your environment is everyone's environment. It wasn't until I went to school in New York and I started talking to other people. I'm like, oh, I was lied to. Like, I learned lies.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of what I was saying is like, at what point it's your responsibility to educate yourself, but at what point?
Yeah.
If you're indoctrinated within a system and like you said, you believe everyone is learning the same thing I'm learning. Of course, the Civil War was about Northern aggression, and everyone from California to New York believes that.
Yeah.
At what point are you responsible for learning otherwise?
Yeah. I only had white teachers, and most of my education, it wasn't until I think my sophomore year in high school that I had another Black student. Like, it was, I was being taught white supremacy, basically. It wasn't until college that I realized that, like, I've been brainwashed.
Wow.
But some people never realize that because they never leave their little area. So
their little echo chamber.
Totally. Yeah. And I think a lot of adults, and we talk about this on our show all the time, a lot of adults today believe that they don't like history, that history is boring or it's stupid, especially American history.
That's how I felt.
Americans.
That's how I still say that. But like every time I listen to your guys' episodes or Rachel's episodes, I'm like, no, actually, this is really interesting and intriguing and devastating and horrific.
I mean, we intentionally pick the worst stories possible.
Right.
But yeah, like people believe, especially American history, that it's boring because that's the history that, you know, American textbooks have no problem talking shit about Germany during the World War II, or they have no problem calling out the bad things that other nations have done. But to this day, Americans don't want to hear anything bad about America. So it's just, instead of reconciling with our past, they just sort of gloss over it and intentionally make it boring. And then kids are like, American history is boring. I hate American history. Why would I want to learn about that? So as much as it is as an adult, once you start to realize like, oh, what I taught might not actually be true, a lot of adults are probably still like, maybe it's not true, but I don't really care enough to look into it because it's boring as and I don't care.
It's boring.
Yeah.
Right.
But I really believe that that's by design, that American history is taught to children as boring on purpose so that they won't look too closely at it.
Yeah.
But yeah, so the UDC has a lot less influence over school textbooks today, thankfully.
Yeah.
But they are still around. They are still out here throwing their weight around. Today, they spend a lot of their time suing states and cities who are taking down monuments that they paid to put up. They had even threatened legal action against officials in Franklin, Tennessee, when the city announced plans not to take down a UDC monument. They didn't want to take down the monument that the UDC put up. They were going to add markers recognizing African American historical figures in the same park as the UDC monument.
And they're like, nope.
Yeah, the UDC is like, we're going to sue you.
Because it's going to be within 600 yards of this same monument.
You can't contradict our lies in the same park.
Yeah, basically.
That is so wild.
I really just want to see these court documents. Like, what are they arguing?
I know. According to a Washington Post article, the UDC also put up at least 20 new monuments in 2020. But now they're instead of putting them in like public places, they're putting them on private property so that local municipalities don't have any power to take them down.
Oh, wow.
But it's not like it's just on some farmer's field. It's where it's very visible, but it's private property.
Sure.
So the legacy of the United Daughters of the Confederacy is a huge reason that so many Americans are so ill-informed about our own history and why white supremacy and racism is so deeply ingrained in our society even today. And it also kind of feels like, I feel like this is why sometimes people in different parts of the country or people with different political beliefs, it sometimes feels like they are living in like a completely different reality.
Because they are.
They are. They literally are. But their reality was built by design on misinformation and lies.
That's why this topic is hurting me so much, because it's one thing to know, do you know what I'm saying? Like, it's one thing to know kind of as an adult that, like, I'm going to accept this narrative because it makes me feel better. And I'm acknowledging that I'm accepting this narrative because it makes me feel better. It's another thing to have been raised in that.
Yeah.
Totally. To not know otherwise.
Literally, since childhood, there are like an unbelievable amount of politicians, lawmakers in Congress, in government today who were raised to believe all of these lies.
This stuff is so recent. Like, that's another thing that always really strikes me when people act shocked about racism is like, this stuff, like, my mom went to a segregated school. Like, these people are still with us. It's not this distant past sort of situation at all.
Thank you both so much for coming on the podcast. Do you want to share with our listeners where they can find you on social media or like listen to your podcast?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, we're on all the places.
Yeah, we're on all the podcast platforms. The show's Beyond Reproach, and everywhere on social media, and our website is Beyond Reproach Pod. We're on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. We have a Facebook, but we don't actually really use it. So yeah.
We also have a TikTok that we don't really use as well. We're primarily Instagram folks.
Yeah.
Seriously, thank you both so much. This was really, really fun. And I was going to say, I hope we do it again soon. Wink, wink to everyone out there.
Foreboding.
Foreboding. Hopefully we do this again very soon. If you all came to our podcast to hear Beyond Reproach, so it's your first time hearing about the #History podcast, we would love it if you would come and join us every Tuesday where we drop brand new episodes about history's greatest stories of controversy, conspiracy, and corruption.
Yeah.
And you can also find us on social media. We are on Instagram at #history_podcast and also on TikTok at #history, all one word.
You can also check us out on our website at #history-pod.com. That's where you'll find all kinds of information about the podcast, about us, about our episodes, our sources, our merch, and other ways that you can help support the podcast.
And this was our season 12 finale, which means we will be taking a short break before we kick things off for yet another season of the podcast. So be sure to follow us on social media so that you can stay in the loop on all of those announcements and hear when we will be returning for season 13.
Woo.
Yay! Thanks everyone for listening.
This was so much fun.
A lot of fun.
Thank you for having us too. Seriously.
Yeah.